Apartment condominiums in Calgary are on the decline. We are down $5,200 from last year, and apartments in Calgary are the most fascinating to talk about because it is the most saturated and then the most volatile compared to all other property types here in the city. Why? There's so many being built, and there is a lot of things that happen very drastically throughout the city. Northwest, Southeast, City Center, all very different markets. So in today's video, we're going to try to break this down as much as possible, look at all the data, and try to give you a general understanding of what's going on with the apartment prices here in Calgary for the month of June. Now, my name is Adam Fyfe, your Calgary realtor, super analytical, trying to give you the best information out there for free. If you are looking for some additional information, there's a lot of links in the description. You can go ahead and download the PDF reports for free. You do not need to give me your contact information. You can click this report. You can read the edited file that I have put together. If you want to book a call, go ahead, put in a request here. Let's have a conversation for your personal situation. Let's see how we can best figure this out for yourself. Or if you want to know what your home is valued at, condos do fluctuate quite drastically throughout the entire city. We're going to go through the analytics later on in this video, but for now, let's dive in. So if you want to read this on your own, that's fine. Skip to the next chapter, but here's what the Calgary Real Estate Board has written about the condo market. Sales this month totaled 579 units, a significant decline from last May's record high of 907. While new listings were lower than levels reported last year, they remained high compared to sales, causing the sales to new listing ratio to drop to 47% this month. This contributed to further inventory gains and drove the months of supply up to 3.6%. Very clearly a balanced market right now, favoring the buyer. High levels of apartment rental units under construction are adding to their rental supply and contributing to rent adjustments. This is likely slowing condo ownership demand coming from existing renters and potential investors, contributing to some of the shifts witnessed in the apartment condominium sector. More supply choices also weighed on the condo prices. In May, the benchmark price eased to $335,000, down from last month and over 1% lower than last year. The steepest declines are occurring in the Northeast and Southeast districts, where competition from the new home market is weighing on resale prices. While prices have eased and are below peak levels, recent declines have not offset the double-digit gains reported over the past 2 years. So we are seeing some slowdowns. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of new construction come to the market, adding to that inventory, adding to the pressure, and taking away from some of the pressures of the. So adding to the pressures and taking away from the pressures. Adding to the pressure of price declines and taking away the pressure from the super low inventory levels that we saw, right? So sales activity still relatively strong, but there's a lot more options, and we're going to continue to see this trend going into 2026. So when we look at this here, this is total city inventory and sales for the condo apartments. You can see that we had a slight decline here. Now we're kind of leveling out, right? Yes, we've seen a slight decline right now, but it's not this drastic decrease that people are hoping to see, right? We've seen a huge increase in inventory, especially compared to last year. We've seen a decline in sales, which surprisingly, we saw a decline from April to May, but we did see that last year as well, basically going right into the year. And we saw an increase in inventory. So we're seeing the same trends, just on a very different trajectory at a different level. We're seeing a lot more listings come to the market. We have over 2,000 units available right now compared to the 1,000 that we had last year. So we are seeing some price stabilization, some declines. I would imagine we're going to continue to see that drop going through all throughout 2025, especially with this, all of these investors that came from Ontario basically buying up a lot of product in 2021, 2022. Now they're going to dump their product. They're still making a profit, even though we've seen declines from last year. They're still up significantly from 2021 and 2022. We'll talk about that in a second. And we're going to see a lot more inventory. So if you're going on the market, you're looking to sell your unit, make sure that you're prepared to price it accordingly. And if you're a buyer, you don't need to jump on these opportunities as fast as possible. Obviously, if there's a unit that comes on the market and it's perfect fit for your family, sure, go ahead, buy that unit, but there's going to be a lot of options for you to choose from here in the future. So this is just a quick overview of the actual market itself. I really like to concentrate on the year-to-date stuff rather than just the month-over-month, just because it gives you a general difference of what happened compared to last year, right? You can see that we're down almost 30% from sales volume, right? So we haven't even hit $1 billion yet, right? So $903 million in sales volume. Last year was a very unique year, right? You can see that we're down 40% just in the month of May, right? A lot of interesting stuff. We've had 51 new units come to the market compared to the 4,700 last year. Now we have had, we do have quite a bit more left over. Year-to-date average, right? So this is taking all the months and it's kind of averaging it out. Months of supply average, right? Look at last year, right? It's so difficult to compare to last year because it was such a hot market that we're now seeing a major shift, right? 3.3 is definitely a balanced market. If it were kind of staying at 3.3, it'd be a nice, comfortable balanced market where you're still seeing some movement, some growth. But because we've rapidly shifted into that 3.3, it's definitely favoring the buyer in the apartment market. And we're probably going to see that that trajectory continue throughout 2025. Sales to new listing ratio average for the year, right? You can see it's 49% compared to last year. Quite a significant difference of the sales to new list price. So last year, majority of people were getting over 100%, even just in the month of May of 2024. Now we're averaging 97%. So again, you're going to the market, you're looking to sell your unit, make sure that you're doing your due diligence and looking at what's going on and not thinking you're going to push that premium price point because your unit is probably not that special. Okay, your unit is probably not that great. Yes, of course, you might have some features and benefits, but you really need to dive into that entire quadrant, not just your community, but the entire quadrant and look at what else is available, what's newer, what's nicer, what's got the better views, what's got the better features, right? The days on market, 41 days on average, which was actually the exact same for the month of May, which is very slow compared to what we've seen over the last few years. Prices, we're not going to touch on because we're going to touch on that in a second. So sales, right? We're down fairly significantly, right? So 2021, we just started to take off, right? 2020 was obviously the pandemic. A lot of things kind of stalled out. You can see we had a fairly steady decline. Calgary went through some fairly depressed years. 2021, we started to take off, but 2022 to 2024 were the hottest years for Calgary condos. A lot of things were very affordable, and they still are compared to some of the major cities. Very affordable, and a lot of people came here moving to buy those investment properties to get into the real estate market. And we've seen, over 2,500 to 3,000 sales at this point. Now we're just hovering at 2,500. So still a healthy-ish market for the Calgary real estate, right? We're not completely dead in the water, but we are significantly down from what we've seen over the past 4 years. Right? When you start to look at the shift in price points, you can see that again, that shift from the 300,000 year to date, under 300,000 year to date, we had over 2,000 sales to this point. Now we have less than 1,000, right? You can see that last year, the yellow bar here, we had 1,500 sales in the $300,000 range, and now we've significantly dropped to 1,000. And we're starting to see, fairly consistent-ish sales numbers for the higher price points, right? But you can see 400,000 again. So we're starting to shift more into more expensive products because clearly the sub $300,000 market doesn't exist anymore. It would be great to see Calgary maybe putting together or, putting the 800 to 900 to like 7 to 900 and breaking it down to maybe the sub, 200,000s and then the 300,000s and whatever, like breaking it down a little bit more. It would be kind of cool to see, but it is what it is. So here's the numerical numbers, breaking it down into the $50,000 segments. If you want to pause it, sure, go ahead and pause it. You can do that. This is sales by property type. So this is the entire sales numbers for the month of May in Calgary. The city center apartments, so the yellow is apartments. You can see that they always have the most amount of sales for the most part because it's the biggest quadrant. Now, detached homes in South Calgary actually outpaced condo sales in downtown Calgary, which doesn't happen too often, right? We are starting to see a major shift into the detached market and a major shift out of the apartment market, just based off of a lot of uncertainty going on here. I don't personally like condos, to be honest. I know if you're looking to, get into the market, you only have so much money. Maybe you're a young family or you don't have any kids yet. Sure, apartments do make sense for primary residence. But when it comes to investment properties, I actually don't advise it, right? Go into some other market, go into the bond market, the stock market, save up enough cash, get enough money to get out of the condominium space, right? Get into land, get into development, get into non-condo townhouses, semi-detached or detached homes. I've seen too much volatility in the apartment market that I don't like it. So I think that a lot of investors are kind of switching over to that in a sense, which makes sense to me. Plus, a lot of people are a little bit uncertain as to what's going to happen in the Calgary real estate market, which makes total sense to me. And I wouldn't be buying an investment property right now for the most part, right? It does make sense if you have enough cash and you're willing to take the risks and you understand what's going on, but I still would be treading carefully and understanding the risks of what you're getting into, okay? So New listings. This is going to be an interesting topic for a long time, right? You can see we've had a steady increase of new listings year to date, year over year, and I don't think this is going to slow down, especially with new construction properties coming on the market. Now, not all new construction comes to the MLS. They sell it off market, they sell it directly to the consumer, which is fine. But we are seeing a lot of that inventory who've purchased in 2021, 2022 coming to the market. So many people have purchased investment properties here in Calgary, and now they're looking to offload those, which makes sense to me. They made a good investment in 2020, 2021, and now they're looking to exit the market, but it's going to drive that price down. And we're going to look at that on one of the last slides here. So this is the breakdown, a little bit more numerical, right, of the similar information, but in a numerical value. So last year, again, super hot sellers market. You had 900 sales, 1,200 new listings, only 1,100 inventory. Now you have almost 600 sales, 1,200 inventory new listings. So similar new listings, but inventory has almost doubled, or pretty much has doubled, right? There's a lot of choice for people to purchase properties, right? Days on market, 41 compared to the 22. You know, you can see that the benchmark price is down from last year, about $5,000 for those attributes. Again, I talk about this every video. Click the link, there's benchmark attributes. It takes you to here. You go to apartments and you look at whatever quadrant you're interested in. Total city here is this, but I've broken it down for you for some simplicity's sakes. So you can see that the median price is down, as well as the average price is also down from last year. So very different atmosphere that we're dealing with when it comes to apartments. Makes total sense to me. Now, months of supply, right? Months of supply is fascinating because it tells you just how quickly a quadrant is moving compared to the others. And it is no surprise to me that East Calgary has the lowest months of supply, under 3 months, still in the twos, because it's so affordable, right? You have Northeast, which has a lot of new product, which making it a little bit more expensive than the average quadrant, just because there's so much new construction going on in the Northeast. But there's so many homes on the market that it's at 5 months of supply, which is clearly a buyer's market, clearly indicating that there's going to be some sort of price declines going throughout 2025, especially in the Northeast, right? So when you look at the months of supply trend, I've pointed this out before, right? Calgary, for the most part, has stayed fairly consistent with their months of supply around 3 to 4 months. So we haven't seen a huge shock to the system, right? We increased pretty quickly in Q3, Q4 of last year, but we've stayed relatively flat, right? We've stayed relatively consistent at 3 to 4 months of supply, right? The trend is clearly up, right? It's gone up dramatically, but when you actually look at the hard data, we've stayed relatively flat. I would imagine we're going to stay pretty flat with continued increases going upwards of, 4.5 months of supply all throughout the year, putting downward pressure and stabilization on price. If we stay at 3 to 4 months of supply, there's going to hit a point where the price just stabilizes, right? We're not going to see a crazy dip. We're going to see a stabilization. If we continue to increase up to 6 months of supply, obviously that's going to drive the price down. But we need to make sure that we're watching the months of supply on a consistent basis at the hard numbers and figuring out what's going to happen. Because at this moment, we're going to see more or less stabilization rather than price declines if we stay at 3 to 4 months of supply. Okay. If you have questions about that, book the call, ask your questions. We can go from there. So the apartment market here is seeing the most declines year over year compared to most markets, right? So you're looking at, your city center, your Northeast, your North, your South, your Southeast, your East, all seeing price declines compared to last year, but you still have your Northwest and West still seeing price increases. So we need to break it down to comparing on where you're looking in the city, right? If you're looking to buy an investment properties, if you're looking to move in, if you're looking to sell, whatever, you want to make sure that you're breaking it down into quadrants, because it is fascinating to see there's still 2 quadrants that are doing okay. There's still 2 quadrants that are doing well compared to the other properties, right? It is interesting to see, even though the months of supply is at 5 months, Southeast is also seeing pretty big declines, very similar to Northeast. Again, Southeast, very flooded with new construction. You look at Rangeview, Mahogany, Cranston. You've got all of these newer communities like Seton, all dumping new construction units on the market, new units, which are nice and they're, low condo fees, but they're putting a lot of downward pressure on that resale market. So you're curious of what your home is valued at. You're looking at refinancing. You're looking at just figuring out how much equity you have, or you're looking at making a sale. There is a link in the description. It is an auto home evaluation tool. It's super slick. It's pretty accurate for the most part, unless you've done any major renovations. Condos are quite easy for the system to try and pinpoint because it uses a lot of data. But if you're looking to figure out what your condo is worth, go ahead, reach out, and thank you for all the people that have done that. Appreciate you, taking your trust and putting it into me and, allowing me to give you some good information, okay? You can also scan this QR code if you want to take to that prompt as well. So let's actually look at what's going on here with the apartment market throughout the entire city, okay? So this is each individual quadrant. And like I mentioned before, just in the previous one, we've seen some increases, west and south. Not anything crazy, $100, which is stabilization, which is like majority of these communities, $300-400 in this realm of price is not much. But when you start to get into Southeast, where they saw a $5,400 decrease, that's a huge difference, right? Southeast, we're just going to pick on them for a second. They had 69 sales, 150 new listings, only a 48% sales and new listing ratio. They have quite a bit of units left over in that 3.46 months of supply, right? You want to know what 355 gets you in the Southeast. Again, going to those attributes, going over here, looking at Southeast and looking at those attributes. It's a home built in 2015, right? That's roughly what you would get for 350,000 on average in the Southeast, right? So a lot of stabilization right now, not a lot of drops, minus the Southeast. You're seeing some price increases in the west, south, and east quadrants, but again, you're looking at east, you're looking at $248,000, but you're looking at a unit built in 2004, right? It's still a 2-bed, it's still a 2-bath, so you're still getting some great attributes there. It's a lot more affordable for people that are looking to actually make that move. So let's look at the market here, right? This is exactly where we start to get into a lot of the information as to how things are going to affect you in your personal situation. And I'm just going to use this as an example because I just want to kind of paint that picture a little bit, right? So you got months of supply at 5 months here in the Northeast. And then if you look at the South, it's under 3 months of supply. So when we go to the market here, we've got South District for apartments. You've got active pending sold, 290 units, right? When you go to Northeast, you have 204 units. So there's actually less units in general compared to the Southeast. The South. But the South has a faster absorption rate. So when you start to look at this, so out of the 204, in the last 30 days, 27 has actually a pending in Northeast. But when you look at South, you've got 72 have sold in the South. So even though there are more units in the South, right, there's a higher absorption rate in the South based off of percentage, right? You've got your active pending sold, 72, and then you've got your lower percentage here in the Northeast at only 27 for the entire quadrant, right? From there, we would then go in, we would look at what has sold. I'm just looking at most recent sales in the Northeast, right? You had one unit that sold basically within 1 day, right? Pine Ridge, 250, it's very affordable. If we go over to the South here, again, I'm just looking at what is recently sold here. The most recent, Lake Buena Vista, right? Both of them, 95% and 97%. Sold within 20 days, so relatively quick for a condo. But they sold under list price, right? This was a 1,200 square foot unit, which is actually quite a huge, like a big unit in Calgary. So where I'm getting at with this, a lot of data, a lot of things need to be absorbed here, and we can go into this and figure out how it's actually going to affect you personally, rather than just looking at these reports, watching these videos, actually diving into the numbers and looking at what's happening in your area. So Calgary has seen consistent declines year over year, starting in Q3 of 2024. So we are in the negatives, right, for the entire city, benchmark year-over-year price, and I would imagine we're probably going to stay in here for a little while. Now, if we look at this price point here, right, you can see that our peaks were around 350,000 last year, right? Now we're hovering around that 335, and we're probably going to see some slight decline stabilization going into 2026, just based off of the amount of inventory, the amount of new listings. So I would imagine that the apartment market is, for the most part, going to stay in that negative year-over-year price growth for quite some time. I don't think there's going to be any major shifts in this market. I don't think we're going to see any increased activity. I think it's going to stay relatively flat, relatively stable, but we're probably going to stay in this year-over-year benchmark decreases for a little while, which is different from the semi-detached market, different from the single-family market. So we just need to watch it. It's still relatively affordable comparative to Toronto, Vancouver. So we still have an attraction. We still see a lot of people coming here and wanting to, start a life. But the rental market is not that strong, right? So you're looking at investors are starting to shy away from Calgary real estate, which is fantastic. We don't want them to be flooding into here and just completely screwing up. We want more, families to buy these things. We want people to actually live in them and enjoy them and actually have that as a first stepping stone for them to actually get into the real estate market. So if you have any questions, I hope this all made sense to you. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next video. I'm going to upload townhouses in the next couple of days. So book the call if you want to have a conversation. Comment your questions. More than happy to reply to those. But thank you. See you. Peace.